Welcome to another episode of Doomer Optimism. I'm here with longtime friend of the show and not yet ever guest, Roxanne. Happy Holistic Homestead on Twitter. My relationship with Roxanne is so great. We met on Twitter. We're like instant buddies. And Roxanne has then been an instructor in my various homesteading, homeschooling, and home economics classes. It's also so cool because she like shows up to the other instructors' classes because she's just like a constant student, which I love. So Roxanne, we're going to talk about your book and homesteading and homeschooling and probably just be like two friends chatting because we are friends. But yeah, start us off by just telling us a little bit about your background, so people get a sense of, who you are and what you do.
Gosh, okay. I'm trying to think of where to start. Let's see.
You know what? It would be interesting to hear your journey a little bit to get started. Like, I know that you spent some time in Costa Rica. Before that, you were like kind of just a regular working girl, Costa Rica. Maybe we should just start a little bit like the brief outlines of your life story.
Yeah, let's see. So I was going to college. We'll start there because that was kind of a paradigm shifter. I was always somebody who questioned everything. It's like my teachers either loved me or hated me. Most of them didn't love, like the teachers that really wanted people to use their brains enjoyed me, but all the other teachers kind of wished I would be quiet. Um, and so when I went to college, I bumped up against a lot of really rigid ideology. I was going to school for I I wanted English was my favorite subject, and and but I thought maybe I wanted to work with kids and be like a guidance counselor or school counselor, and so I was going to school for psychology and English lit, and during that time and the higher I kind of went up into the psychology side of things, it just became really apparent to me that there was really only one way. In academia, like they feel like each sort of sector of academia feels like they've got it really sorted and figured out, and they are there to really. You're not there to like to learn how to learn or to use your mind. You're there to sort of accept and perpetuate the accepted ideology at
Yeah.
the time, and that's just never really been how I've worked. And so at the same time I was doing that, I was also working in real estate and in mortgages, and I wouldn't say I'm even good at that, but it was a really beneficial, like it was an easy time to get really to make a lot of money in
Yeah.
that sector. Like I had one guy who bought 10 houses for me in a day, just an investor, and that's kind of what was happening with young people in my field at that time. And then I was also I went on this like work retreat where it was you went and stayed somewhere where you ate all this really healthy food, and you did all these treatments and stuff like that, and it was sort of outside the realm of anything that I'd ever done, and it was really life changing in that I came away from that experience feeling healthier than I had ever felt before. And it sounds really silly looking back on it now, but I had the realization that the food I was eating was contributing directly to how I felt. And growing up, I sort of, it was like the people that ate healthy, they were the health nuts, and we ate all the processed food and we were normal. And I really didn't put two and two together, but I would say, I had a friend tell me once, you're always sick. I couldn't go out because I was like, I'm just sick. I can't come. And they're like, you're always sick. Why are you always sick? And so anyway, I went on this retreat, and that was really life changing. And then I kind of went into learned about different healing modalities too. Because after that retreat, I was like, I'm done with regular college because this is like not how I want to help people. And so I went to what I call the hippie college, and it's the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. And I learned all kinds of awesome things there. But my concentrations were holistic nutrition and herbalism. But I got to study all kinds of fun things over there, and like different kinds of body work. And you get practiced on a lot too, because all your friends are students. And so I had some, just things that I had to work through from my early life that I got to work through that way, and found these ways of healing to be so much more beneficial than sort of the Western routes to things. My health took an enormous improvement. So that whole thing really changed my life, and how I looked at health and how I ate, and where I wanted to direct my energy in life, because I really wanted to help people. But then I realized that I might not get to help people the way I wanted to help people if I went the standard psychology route. Because I feel like, because of accreditation, in certain fields, you can really only do what your accrediting agency is like allowing you to do. And this is for many, many fields. This is for doctors. This is for anybody. And so I was like, that whole system just didn't make sense to me anymore. So anyways, I started going down that field, and I was helping people with their nutrition. I even did some life coaching at like 23 or however old I was. I was so full of wisdom. But it was fun, and it was just a different approach, because it was sort of like the life coaching approach was just a different way of helping people. And I liked that approach more, because it really put them in the driver's seat. Right. And expect agency from them. And it wasn't just like, I'm going to come and talk about my problems forever. No, I don't want to fix it. Give me the pills. Like it wasn't like that. It was people that really wanted results.
Yep. And more holistic, like not just one sector of their life, like a more holistic look at all the different ways in which they could change. Yeah.
Yeah. And we learned about that too. There was like, they taught us how to do a balance wheel of your life, and each is like a pie, and to where you could visually kind of figure out where you were at in each sector of your life. And so you could trace your, whatever it was, your fatigue, your depression, and you could figure out where it was coming from, by taking account of your life, cool. Which I thought was really useful. And then I met my husband, and he's just an extreme different personality than I am. I was like very introverted, stay at home all the time, never go anywhere. My best friend, I lived in this little town. I had bought a house in this tiny little like faraway suburb of Phoenix. And I never went out. She's like, you haven't been to any of the restaurants or bars in your town? You lived here for 3 years. And I'm like, and so she dragged me out, and we went to one place and overheard a conversation that immediately made us flee. It was something about Miley Cyrus. And at the time she was like 14. And we're like, we got to get out of here. These guys are talking about Miley Cyrus, and it's gross. And so, ways that you wouldn't want to hear a 14-year-old girl being discussed. Yeah. And so we went, that's like, thank you, Miley. I got to meet my husband that way, or thank you, weird guys at the bar. So I went to the next place and saw my husband, and I have to say it really was like love at first sight. As cheesy as that sounds, it was like, I knew immediately that I loved him. And I just didn't feel that way about people at that age. I think I was like 24, 25. And I was like, sometimes you feel old at that age, looking back now, I was like, am I ever going to get married? Am I ever going to have kids? I've given up, maybe I'll move to France. Maybe I'll whatever. Like
that's exactly how Patrick was when I met him. I think we met when I was like 24 or something. We were like 24, and he was just like, I was so ready to give up. And then I found you. I was like, you're 24. He was like, I was like, what does even give up mean at 24? I don't know. But he was like, I'm just so sick of it. I'm so sick of dating. Oh my God. But I mean, I guess if you've been dating since like 18 or like even high school romances, it's like a decade of dating waiting to just like stop, So I guess it is like, it is really, the 20s are actually kind of torturous in a lot of ways, in our society. It's like you really do like have to go through it. You don't know what's going on. There's no like set traditions that like help you navigate what you're going to do. It's like you're on your own, explore, or like find whatever you want to do. And you're just kind of like, I mean, there's literally like infinite options. I mean, I could do 100,000 different things in this life, the life that we have. So it's like, it is kind of torturous. I feel bad for like, every time you talk to somebody when you're in your 20s, it's like, what are you up to? What work are you doing? Like, what do you plan to do with your life? And like all this pressure.
Well, I mean, that's such a good point too, because I would say at that stage of my life, I knew I wanted, like I said, I felt really drawn to help people and to like fix things. I think that's just my nature is I'm like a helper type person, and I'm sort of a natural cheerleader. And so, but I didn't have I didn't have my own passion. I hadn't found that yet. And so, like I was making money very easily, and I was able to buy whatever I wanted. And so I kind of had this, realization really early on that was super empty. Because it was nice. It's really nice to be able to throw money at your problems or at other people's problems and help them. And, like, that's great. But I was living in my big house all alone, and it was like, so I think a lot of people aren't 22 when that happens to them. They're
Yeah.
older and they've chased it their whole life. And just
Yep.
because I have to be in the right time, right place, really no good. I'm not a good salesperson. It wasn't like a testament to me at all.
It was just
That I was
time and place. Yeah.
I knew
Right.
a couple of big investors, and it was the right time.
Yep.
And so and I was around, and that was the thing too, is I was around a lot of people that were between my age and maybe 40 years old that were making it big, just really big, even way bigger than I was. I mean, they were like living in these crazy mansions in Scottsdale, and they were like buying private shares of jets, not their own jets, but like partial shares. And like I knew these people, and they were miserable, miserable.
Yep.
And like terrible, unhappy in their marriages, terrible relationships with their kids. And so I think when I met my husband, I had felt really defeated. Like, wow, this whole, like, the American dream felt a little bit like a lie, because it was like, okay, I'm going to work really hard. And I had like a tremendous work ethic from a young child. I was always working, working, working. So I saved up and I got my first house. I was like on my second house by the time I met my husband. And it just felt like, well, but I'm not happy. So why is that? And anyways, so we met, and he's a force. If you ever meet him, you'll know what I mean. He's just like, he's the happiest person you've ever met. He's so gregarious. Like, people are sort of like, is he for real? Like, he takes people off guard with his like warmth. And I've just never met anybody like him. He's amazing. I feel so grateful that he's my husband. But anyways, so I met him, and it changed my life, because up to that point I had been like, well, I don't want to perpetuate any of these genetics into the future. I'm just quitting dating. You know what I mean? And then and then, yeah, we moved to Costa Rica, and I kind of saw the flip side of the coin. Here were people, we were out by the beach. Here were people with absolutely nothing. A lot of them didn't even have like windows in their house or like a front door. Like, they're leaning out of like just a hole in their wall and like waving to you. Biggest smiles you've ever seen. A family of 6 riding around on a mini bike, just with big smiles on their faces. And they were so generous. You would go knock on someone's door, and they would just be like, come inside. I just cooked food. What do you, here, let me give you some food. And it was just amazing. And so the juxtaposition of all these people who had materially made it and then going somewhere where people didn't really have anything, but they were super happy. It just, that really shaped my worldview. And then when we moved back to the States and my husband got a job on restoring an old apple orchard. And then the family there they had 4 young children. They were homeschooling, homesteading. And so I got to see that up close, got to see how happy this family was and the relationships the siblings had and how capable the children were. I had just never been around children like them before, and I was kind of blown away by just their personalities and what they were able to do and how happy they were, how somehow their capableness and their happiness went hand in hand.
Yeah.
It was like we're allowed to do things and to be part of what felt to them like grown-up work, and it made them behave in a whole different way. Yeah. And so all of those events kind of amalgamated or whatever and alchemized, and it became sort of, I guess, what our family was planted in. It was the dirt our family was planted in, and it shaped how we've raised them. So and then after that experience, we saved and saved and saved so that we could buy land. We moved here and we saved and saved and saved so that we could build. And we eventually, last year, we took out a loan. Our hope was like, we didn't really want to take on more debt and we wanted to build without debt, but that became like just impossible. And so last year we finally took out a loan to finish the build, and we're like really close. We're like weeks away from moving it. It just keeps getting dragged out because, contractors won't show up, and then you have to reschedule everything. And so we're just kind of like doing everything ourselves, and it's all hands on deck. My husband's had family members driving up to help, like his uncle and like his friends. These guys are 70 or almost 70, and what they accomplish in a weekend blows you away because you've been paying crews for weeks and not seeing the progress that they'll come and just do in a couple of days.
I have to just take a moment, and I've never said this on the podcast before, but I just have to take a moment and just totally stan my dad and his friends for this kind of stuff, because he's like, let's see, he is 66. And he's worked physical, like manual labor stuff his whole life. He was a Chicago fireman, and then on the side he was like, like a kind of contractor, would work with friends, but he would do roofing primarily. And it's so crazy. So he's got like all these friends who are all in like various trades or like plumbing or carpentry, and they will come and I mean, it's so fast. They're obviously so capable. They work so hard. They don't ever stop. Like, just seeing them work, like they're like, forget to eat, it's like one of those things. They just get into it. They get it done. They're so capable. My only regret is that I think as a daughter, it was just like not expected that I learn any of the stuff he was doing all the time. And I'm like, I have so few skills. And like, I think the idea was like, oh, I want better for you. I want you to not have to do these kinds of things, but like they're so amazing. And like my sister bought a house in Chicago, and like it was basically like all my dad's like 60, almost 70-year-old friends who like renovated her house because they're like better than any contractor you could hire. So that's cool. I love that. And so I was loving your boomer post the other day for that reason, because it is like, I mean, it is really just, you want to complain about some things about the boomers, but like that generation is the most capable one out there right now. And we get less and less capable as it goes down.
I know. Well, there's going to be a big, it's almost like Generation X is getting sort of skipped or something, because the boomer generation, at least in agriculture, they hold a majority of the land right now, a majority of the farms, and that's expected that about 40 to 60% of the agricultural lands are going to change hands in like the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And so who's going to buy that land? Who's going to, is it going to be Bill Gates? Is it going to be foreign investors? Is it going to be small family farmers?
Yep.
We need more hands in the dirt, more people working the land. And I think you and I have come to a lot of similar conclusions that way, because when you see, when you learn about the way agriculture is currently done, versus seeing it done up close and on a smaller scale, um, what that means for the ecology of the place, and then the human health that is a part of that ecology, really, is you realize that, and people don't want to hear it, but we don't, what we need is more people working in agriculture and more people, basically doing labor on the land, and people really don't like it when
No,
you
they
talk
hate
about
it. And
that.
it's so funny because like we had this meme a couple, I don't know, maybe it was like half a year ago or something, where all these people go to like CrossFit and various gyms and like weightlifting and stuff, and they're literally moving metal
They're
around
doing farm work.
around a room. I mean, they're one of the weightlifting weight I don't know, moves, I don't know what they're called, is called the farmer's carry. It's literally carrying two metal things across a room. I was like, and it was so funny. I had a friend come visit me here in Uruguay, and he was like, Patrick was like felling some trees, small trees, in our little wood lot, and like carrying them over to process them over here for firewood. And he's like a weightlifter guy. And he was like, oh man, like this effing sucks. I'm sweating so hard. There's so many bugs everywhere. And I was like, dude, this is like, this is the same as what you're doing, except for it's not an air conditioning or whatever. So it would be really cool. I think people would actually enjoy it if they got used to it too. Because not only do you like get more healthy from doing the outdoor activities, like you have something to show for it, not just your body. Your body is not like the ultimate goal. Like there's other goals besides just like looking like you are a big muscle guy.
So we've segmented everything so much, and like put everything in this like sort of reductionist hell or whatever, because it's like we have separated we've separated meaningful work from labor or whatever, or like even for children. I mean, do you remember being a child in school and being given busy work?
Yeah.
And how really insulting that was to you as like a 7 or 8 year old, just being like completely, I mean, I remember I wasn't happy about it. I was like, what am I going to do with this? Throw it in the garbage when I'm done? What is this for?
Yeah.
Like, let's do something. If we're going to write, let's write a letter. Like I don't want to just practice my letters. I want to write something that's going to be for something. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like there was so much work that we did that was just like, well, time to throw it in the garbage. I mean, you would do it in class, like just put it in the recycling. It's like, well, what? And so, and then for people, it's the same thing. It's like, we're like, okay, well, let's let all the machines, we'll fuel all of agriculture with fossil fuels. Meanwhile, we'll use fossil fuels to air condition the gym. And we're going to go work out, and we're all going to watch screens while we work out. And it's going to be like very dystopian and strange. I mean, when I drive past a gym in the middle of the night and it's all lit up inside and people are like on their bikes watching TVs, it's like, I feel like I've slipped into a strange reality. And people will probably, people get mad. I mean, I tweeted something a while back about, hey, imagine how much energy we could harness if all the guys that hung out in the gym would just like get on farms. And man, those gym bros got so mad at me.
Oh my God.
I mean, they dragged me so hard, and I had to really talk to them about it. And I found that if you're really, really sincere with people and earnest with them, it's sort of like they don't know what to do about it. Like they back off because they're like, oh, wow. The snark, if you get really snarky, it'll just go on forever. But if you're like, I am very sincere because I am.
Yeah.
And they're sort of, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Like eventually they'll, you know what I mean?
Their lizard brain comes back into the form where they learn like their historical traditional morality that's been dug down deep in their brain to respect like older like mothers and,
Yeah,
and women like comes to the fore at some point. You're just like you just have to keep poking at it
it's
long enough.
true.
Okay, so
It's
but
true.
here's
They're
the
like,
oh
yeah,
sorry.
maybe if they realize how old I am, they're like, maybe that's it. They're like, oh, she's a mom. She's not like, our
Funny.
age or whatever.
Yes,
Sorry.
exactly.
No, and so, and I really don't want to tear down people who are, because there's so many negative things you could be doing. So I don't want to tear down people who are like, I'm going to be serious about my health and my fitness. Like, I
Right.
think that's awesome. And it's usually that. It's like I talk sometimes about public school, or I talk about public health or whatever, and people think I'm just sort of attacking everybody involved in those things, and it's like, no, I'm attacking like the system that's perpetuating these terrible outcomes. Like we're all just fish in the fishbowl. It's the water we're swimming in, and we're trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And so I'm not like if your kid is in public school, I don't think like that's bad for like that. I'm not judging the people who do that, but I'm looking at the way that kids are educated out there, and it's like, well, it's not working, or uh, medicine is a certain way, and we're seeing all these really terrible health consequences. So I'm not like judging you for being a doctor or for going to one, but it's like, let's look at it and realize it's not working, and let's do something else.
Yeah, and I think that's my thing too, is like the whole making a sociological analysis. People take it really personally, and it's not like, yeah, I think we're actually all allies, the individuals, and the system that we're all stuck in is the enemy. Oh, can you hear me? Did you lose me for a second? Oh, it was my fault, I think. It said internet connection unstable. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, so yeah, it's more like the system that's the problem, not the individuals in it. Like we're all allies, and the system itself is the problem. But I want to ask you, a lot of people just think it's like impossible. They think like living on a homestead is just impossible or unrealistic, and there's all sorts of like reasons people give, and I think the most reasonable thing people say is like there's no access to land or whatever. But then the counterpoint is that there is actually like a lot of small towns and abandoned places where you can get things for super cheap, and you don't need to have like 100 acres to do any version of this.
Mm-hmm.
What is your take on that? Because like obviously you reached a point where you were like, you went and visited this homesteading family, and then you said like, I want it for my life. Like how does that movement from that I want this to like making it happen look, or like what advice do you have for people? Because I encounter people constantly or just like, this is so unrealistic, and I just don't think it is, because I see a bunch of people doing it who want to do it. If you want to do it, you can most likely get it done if you lean into your agency and all the different like freedoms you have. But yeah, I'd be curious what you think.
I hear that a lot about homesteading and homeschooling. People say, "Oh, you're so privileged. You must be rich." All that kind of stuff. When we came back from Costa Rica, so prior to Costa Rica, I had done well, but I was terrible with my money. I bought a house, but just like spent or gave away the rest of my money, and when we came back from Costa Rica, we had nothing. We started over, you know. And so, and we had a small child at the time. I think it's like anything else. I think being a cheerleader for people, you come across people that want your help and that want things to happen, and do have agency. And then a lot of times what you do is you run into people who just want to tell you all the reasons why they can't. And I used to have a lot more patience for the people who wanted to tell me why they couldn't. I feel like we're just too late in the game for it now. I don't give a lot of energy to those people now. I just sort of move along. Can you hear me? Because I think
Yes.
it's a little frozen on my side, but I
Yes, I
can't
can hear you.
tell.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. And so I hope that doesn't make me sound like a mean person. But I mean, just coming from my background, people make a lot of assumptions about you based on how you act or how your life has turned out. And they think, oh, well, they do the math in their head and they're like, well, this is the outcome she had. So this was probably her background. Um, I, um, you know, I was a foster kid. I came from really, really dark circumstances. Like people, like all the things that happened in my life. If it was a Lifetime movie, you would be like, this is not believable. This is,
Wow, that's
they went
bad.
over the top with this
Yeah.
one. They should have cut out a couple of those things because it isn't even, it's pretty bad. I mean, I had people that were close to me that were like, it took them a long time to accept the things that I was telling them as like they were truth, or they had to verify them with other sources to believe they were true because a lot of it sounded kind of crazy. And so, I'm not saying that everybody that came from those kind of circumstances can do what I did, because I feel like I there were people along the way that helped. I leaned in really hard into my faith at an early age. And so people roll their eyes, but I feel like God really, really was there for me in my life. And like my faith is a huge part of me. And me and my husband, we prayed before we moved here. We pray all the time that we could just like live out God's will in our life, that we could stay within obedience, even when it's hard, and so I think that's it too. There's certain scriptures that go along with it, but I feel like even in homeschooling, a lot of times when people homeschool, if they stick with it, they'll start out secular, but if they stick with it long enough, there's going to be like a lot of people have a conversion, because God helps. It's true. God, and like God will fill in the gaps in the strength, like have it on your own. And some people call it the universe or spirit or whatever. But for me, it was always my faith, and that's like what the box that it's in for me. And so that's one thing. And people don't like to hear it who are not believers, because they can't rationalize it. And I understand that, because I went through a major seeking in my life where I sought to really rationalize everything. And you can't, it's like, just like you can't rationalize like a feminine intuition, like when you're a mother and there's things that you just know.
Yep.
And you don't, it's like the thing we were talking about one time when it's like, the guys who will use the scientific studies to discount things that are happening right in front of their face.
Yes.
Like it's actually happening right now. And they're like, well, the study says, and it's like, well, the studies are relevant to me. Okay. Like I can see what's going on.
Yep.
Anyway, so I do feel like there is, because things have been so easy. I almost feel like having things be really hard for me as a kid, it informed a lot of my personality. And so I'm used to working hard, and I'm used to things being hard. And nothing was handed to me when I was young. And so I think that there's a lot of people that grew up in our country, and things are just so much easier here for people than they are really like almost anywhere else.
Yeah, they
like
really
the
are.
benefits that you have just by being here, incredible. And people are losing sight of that. And it's like, no, it's still much easier to start a business, to make your own way. Even land ownership. I mean, land ownership in some countries is not even, like you just can't.
Yeah.
Like, you'll never get there.
Yep.
And so to be able helped was to see it up close. We saw other people doing it. And which is why I try to share my journey, is to like to give people hope, and I want to give them, because I don't think I would have gotten to where we are or made the choices we had made if I hadn't seen up close and personal what that looked like because I had so little exposure to that growing up. So I think that's why I share, because honestly, I didn't do any social media until about 4 years ago because I really don't like it. And my whole thing was always like, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, neat, share. And then I kind of saw what social media was doing to a lot of the young women in my life that I loved and the things it was placing importance on. And I was like, hey, there's actually this great tool, but like it's not just about how you look, and it's not just about like, and it was breaking people, and I could see it. And so I wanted to do something. I wanted to be like, well, here is another way to use it. You can share what you're good at, you can share a positive message, and like my hope is to encourage people with that message, but also to for young women especially, like it's not just about like your physical beauty is not the only thing you are, and there's like so much beauty inside of all of us, and there's beauty in the capableness and the ability that you can bring to a situation and all of that. And so because I'm you, and like the way that young women measure themselves is like, it makes me sad. So anyway, I'm rambling.
No, that's good. And actually, I'm curious, like this beauty thing, because you and I have talked about this before, and I have this essay I want to write on this topic, but my thesis is that that like beauty in the superficial sense, like beauty in the sense of being like a sexually attractive. Oh no, am I gone again? Testing 1 2 3. Am I back?
Nope, you were cutting out a little bit.
Okay. Okay. So
again.
Yeah, so beauty and like beauty in like the sexually attractive sense can actually become pretty grotesque because people just keep pushing it to the point where they're like almost caricatures of like what is sexually attractive. And I think that that's an outcome of just like commodifying our bodies. And I think that there's a different kind of beauty that results from an interdependent society. So if you need to rely on others, you can kind of recognize their beauty in their virtues. And so I think about wait, hold on a second. Can you hear me? I'm going to turn my video off and see if that works. So I was thinking, okay. You posted this picture of this grandmother in like a beautiful cottage at a sink. And you were like, this is beautiful. And like anyone looking at that can tell that that's beautiful because it's like this woman, just that image is somebody who you're relying upon, who gives love, who is like important in people's lives in all these ways, big and small. And there, I don't know, maybe you can riff on like the beauty thing a little bit, because I actually think there's almost like an aesthetic case to be made that like, you do this really well on Instagram and on Twitter, like just posting pictures of beautiful things that I think like are inherently virtuous. And that's how you can tell that they're beautiful. And it's not just because they're like superficially beautiful, like there's something underneath it that you can tell what's good or not good based on the beauty, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I am. Let's see. So when you were talking, so years ago, I used to talk about, like back when I was in my 20s, I kind of saw what was happening to small towns and to the quality of merchandise because of Walmart. And I called it the Walmartalization of America. And when you were talking, it occurred to me that something similar is happening with beauty, with women's beauty especially, and let's call it the Kardashianization of women's beauty. Like this image of what people have seen on this show, and like the certain way they do their makeup thing, like it's becoming really prevalent everywhere. And it's not it's not beautiful. It, like you said, it's almost some grotesque, because then the makeup, instead of enhancing your natural beauty or whatever, becomes about looking like someone else, like mimicking someone else. Like, let's contour our face and get like fillers put in our face and do things until we don't look like ourselves anymore. We look like this version of beauty that we've been sold. And so that makes me sad. And so I think that there is an inherent beauty, like that everybody has inherent beauty if they are allowed to express themselves and express what they are. Now, can you hear me at all? I just want to.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So think about a seed and how inside every single seed is a plant. And if that plant is nourished and you put it in good soil and you give it the conditions that are conducive to its growth, that it's going to express itself in a really beautiful way. But if you put it in barren soil, or you subject it to conditions that it doesn't like, or you try to treat it like a different kind of plant, then it's not going to be as beautiful. It's not going to fulfill its potential. And I feel like everybody is like that. Like, inside of us, we have a seed. We have something we're supposed to be. And I think that the more people are allowed to express that seed, that image, whatever it is, because we're all so unique, but the more they are able to express that, the more beautiful they become.
Yes.
I think that when you're trying to express someone else's, like if a tomato was trying to be an apple tree, like, that wouldn't work out very well, right? And so I think first and foremost, we have to allow people to express their innate tendencies and who they are. And I think that our education system, because it's all about standardization, really, really, it gets people young. It gets people really young used to not actually being attuned with who they are inside and what's like written on their specific blueprint for life. And so I think, and then as far as beauty, to me, beauty is like a love language, like to make something beautiful for someone, because, and this goes kind of back to my faith as well. This will be interesting. I wonder how the Doomer Optimist audience is like as far as religious faith, but
I think there's like a third of people who are like pretty strongly religious who are in our group. But yeah, go for it. I like it.
If beauty didn't matter, God wouldn't have taken such care to put so much beauty in the world. Like every sunset, every fall leaf, if you look closely, there's beauty absolutely everywhere in the natural world. And when you see, now there's death and decay and all that stuff as well. That's all part of nature too. But a lot of, when you see ugliness, a lot of it is stuff that men have either destroyed in nature, or it's things that we've built. There's a lot of beautiful things that we've built too. And I think that when men were more attuned with the divine, and when they built, when their buildings were a form of worship, the buildings were a lot more beautiful. The more divorced people have become from their faith and from like their aesthetics being an expression of their religious faith, the uglier have become. And that's even true in like modern art and stuff. It's gotten pretty grotesque. Whereas you go back to some of the first paintings a long time ago, and the whole point was that they were trying to capture some sort of divinity, and that stuff was really beautiful,
right?
And so I think that there's something to be said for that, and I think that it's something to notice. And so yeah, for me, beauty and creating beauty in the world is a love language. It's a way to love your family, like to take the time to make a beautiful pie. Like, I have a family member that like teases me about it. Like, why would you spend so much time doing that? They're just going to eat it. And it's like, well, because of the wonder. Like, did you see the look on their face though? Did you see how happy it made them?
Yep.
It makes them feel so loved. What better use of my time is there,
Right.
than to create that's going to make my child have a good memory and like gasp with delight. Like I live for that, as a mother. And so like, I can't really think of a better way to use my time, you know? So that's it, is like, I think, I think I saw it might have been a Simon Says one where he said, I want to know how to make things beautiful, or I want to know why things are beautiful. And I think I said something like, I think that there has to be love. Like you make things beautiful because of love, whether it's for your family or a place or a methodology of creation. Like you love to paint and you love the medium, and you know what I mean? But I think beauty and love are connected. They're interwoven, and I think all of creation is an expression of that, So that's my rip on beauty.
I love that.
Does that answer anything?
Yes, it does. And I think like to turn towards your book, I want you just to tell us about the book. Like what why did you write it? What's in it? I think like the thing that I love about Roxanne is that you are like so good at understanding like the high level theoretical stuff, and then you also really know how to help people like get into the actionable zone, like how to get going with their own lives, like very practical, very much meet people where they're at. Like maybe you've never done a single thing like this before, you've never baked a loaf of bread, but you can start, and it's really just like a step-by-step getting more comfortable with these different things. So let's hear about your book. Are you there, Roxanne? Can you hear? Do you
Yep, I can hear you. When you turned
Okay.
the video off, you came back more.
Okay, so basically, yeah, let's just hear about your book. Let's hear what was behind it, and let's hear what's in it.
So I think maybe the point of even me sharing on social media a lot is a little bit to like meme people into this lifestyle of being more active in the production of your food and families doing life together and all that, and the beauty that can be in it. And I feel like today it's like we do live in a really fast moving culture, and so these beautiful images, they can capture people and kind of make people more interested in it. And it's not like every moment of this lifestyle isn't like sunshine and roses, to be sure, but it's like parenthood. Like not every moment is perfect, but it's like it's so amazing and lovely, and the moments that are good, they make up for all the hard stuff. And I feel like that's kind of how the homesteading life is, the homeschooling life is. The moments that are good are like so good. And I just want people to know that level of goodness in their life, because before I was exposed to it by my friend, when we were living on her farm, I had really never seen life be so beautiful. I mean, that's why we wanted to live that way, because we're like, wow, this is amazing. That sort of became how we lived. And then I wanted to share that more with people, so that people, I could get other people kind of on board with that, because it's such a fulfilling way to live. And it was so much better than the way that I grew up. And then so the book became sort of an answer to people that were either just getting started, or people that know where to start, or people that were like living in an apartment and they might be 10 years away from buying land, but they have to be more involved in the production of their food, to have this sort of more meaningful ways of doing things woven experience. And then also how, you move out onto your land and you start growing food and stuff, and you think that's it. But, the first couple of years, I didn't really know what I was doing as far as preservation or how to use all these things. And so I wasted a lot, because things would just sit on my until. And so there's a lot of really good homesteading books out there, and I feel like this one is is meant for anyone, like at any part of their journey, because if you're already sort of living that way, you might not know how to ferment, or you might not know how to forage. There's a lot of people that are growing food that don't know how to forage. So I wanted to give sort of a quick intro to all these different skills that I feel like if you know all of these skills, you can really, really take a lot of agency in your life, even if you don't have land at all. Even if because you can even still pursue growing food in a community garden if you want, and you can get your meat from farmers. But if you know how to forage, how to bake bread and basic baked goods, how to preserve things so you can buy in bulk and preserve, I mean, those things can give you such a step up on your food independence. And all of it, to me, leads to a better existence for you. Like your health will improve, because if you're getting your food without all these additive stuff, your life's gonna be better, your health is gonna improve. And if we're doing everything on a smaller scale, the earth is gonna improve, because these massive agricultural methods that we're using billions of tons of pesticides, I mean, we're poisoning the soil and the water and everything. So I think that's where it came from for me. It was like it's a way that I choose to live my life, but I choose to live my life this way because I'm serious about ecology and environmentalism and the health of my family and all that stuff. For me, it wasn't ever a trend, and I love that it's kind of trending now. That gives me hope. But I hope that some people, that they stick with it after that trend is over, because I think doing everything on a small, more local scale is where we need to move.
Yeah. So. Okay. So, and I have two follow-up questions. One is, like, I think a lot of people think it's like either all or nothing. Like, I can't get into this homesteading stuff. Like, it's too much. Like, I have work. I can't do this. And it's like, even doing something as simple as like fermenting some kombucha and baking some bread would be like a step in the right direction. And then the other question I have, and we can just do these in order, is I actually am kind of nervous about the trend thing, because as things like pick up in popularity, especially in the US and like in the social media world, it becomes this like thing that gets corrupted or like done for the wrong reasons, or like, I mean, like worst case scenario, a bunch of like white collar people move out into like Neil Clark's town and totally ruin it, and then don't do anything like legit in terms of food production. They don't care about the ecology, and then they kind of like come in, ruin it, and then move back to the cities or something, you know? So I'm worried about those things. So let's just take those in order. The first one, just like, does it have to be all or nothing?
I'm growing food in our back. We lived in
Hey, Roxanne, try turning your video.
Driving to the farm and growing.
Hey, Roxanne, turn your video off. Your audio's
okay. I stopped the video. Can you hear me better?
Yes, now I can hear you. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Is this better now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't think it has to be all or nothing at all. And and it bothers me when people think that. And even me now, I mean, we've been trying to pursue this lifestyle for almost 13 years now. And we are not even, I mean, I'm not completely independent from the store. I'm not growing my own wheat. I don't make all of my own clothes. You know, it's like we still are dependent on a larger system. My hope is that society can transition and shift to it being more localized systems, you know, so that I'm not supporting these global supply chains, which, I mean, that was another thing that shifted for me. Is I did a lot of work writing about global supply chains and just realizing that basically every single one of them is sickening, you know, whether it's because of the pollution they cause or the slavery they involve or whatever. It's like you just have to keep production local to keep people accountable. It's really what it is. And we allow global supply chains, and people are allowed to manufacture their products in one country and sell them in another country. We really don't know what's going into that product, and then the corporations that do it, they have the deepest pockets ever, and so they'll just litigate and litigate and litigate and never ever be responsible for the destruction and the slavery and all the things that they're involved in. So anyways, that's another little side. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You do what you can, you stay where you are. It starts in little ways. I mean, I've learned maybe to grow a couple of new things a year. It doesn't happen all at once. And so we live in a culture that's very people are used to being able to get things fast and do things really fast. And that's not what this is. It's a lifestyle choice. And you just sort of, you learn skills. And it would have been nice had we learned these skills peripherally growing up from like our elders. But because of the way that society was sort of sorted in the last couple of generations, we didn't. And so it's like we're learning them from scratch now, or from YouTube or whatever. It's definitely not all or nothing. People just start where you are with what you have and just learn one thing a year. You know, that's it.
Right. And you can like, you can even do it in your own home, like without even having land. Like you could just do the home economic stuff. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you could go to like a U-pick orchard and get their seconds and turn those things into like cider and applesauce or whatever. Like you don't have to even have land to do some of these skills. I think that's the other thing. I think people just like they're like,
that's exactly
if I could just get onto some land, then I'll be happy. And it's like, well, maybe if you can't, though, you can still learn these things in the meantime. So yeah. And then the second question I have is about the trendiness. Like, I feel like a pretty strong responsibility, especially among our little Doomer Optimism group, to try to highlight like the important things to think about and to do in terms of ecology, but also in terms of respecting local cultures if you're moving into a new place. And so I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to be respectful of the people who live, you know? Yeah, no, I mean, I totally get your concern. There are a lot of people that are kind of jumping on the bandwagon, and you worry that they're going to go into some of these smaller communities where maybe the land is inexpensive, but then what can happen is it can drive up cost of living for people there. It can remove local opportunities from people there. And then if people get tired of it, then they sort of just leave and move away, and you end up with this system that's been sort of gutted, the way that like big corporations would come in and, you know, build a factory and then leave 20 years later. And, you know, I don't think it would have those sort of implications, but you can sort of really mess up local economies this way. Yep. And since I'm somebody who's like really advocating for localism, I think it's like, if you're going to move into a new economy, you just sort of need to, like put yourself almost at like the bottom of the totem pole kind of thing. Like, you have to understand, you have to make an effort to understand the way that people are there. And, like, I almost feel like there's this attitude amongst some people where they see that things where they are very broken, but they want to go somewhere that's not broken, but they want to bring their politics and ways of doing things. They're like, I'm going to go to this new place that's fine. And then I'm going to take all of my old ideology from the place I was living, and I'm going to thrust it on these people, and I'm going to fix this backwards place. And I'm like, okay, maybe this place is awesome. This place is awesome because it hasn't yet been infected with that kind of ideology. Right. Did you ever think about that? And so I think you need to have a certain amount of humility, you know, when you're going into a new place. I mean, my husband and I, we lived here several years before we even voted. We would like pay attention, and we researched everything, and we got to know the candidates, and we paid attention, but like we kind of like trying to understand what was going on here. We waited 5 or 6 years before we participated in the farmers market. I don't think you have to do that. I think it's fine. It's kind of like we need an all hands on deck, boots on the ground at the same time now, like more people producing things so that we can move away from these globalized structures.
Right.
But just to be respectful and mindful, like if you are starting a booth at the local farmers market, like we found out when we first went there, what's everybody else producing? And we tried to come with something that no one else had versus we're going to make something that these ladies have been selling here for years and like
outcompete them or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like try to do something different. But yeah, and also you have to be respectful of the local ecology. Like, take the time to get to know it because every, like bioregionally, the plants that are going to do well there and like people, I always encourage them to really get to know the place they are because people, okay, so people have become accustomed to all the food at the grocery stores and they think that's what they should be growing everywhere. That stuff is just it's what stores and ships well.
Right.
So you need to get to know the place you live and maybe try producing some of those things and then you can be more respectful to the local ecology, as opposed to like going someplace that's not suited for apple production and clearing out your back lot and down by your creek of like all trees and planting stuff that maybe isn't going to thrive there and that you're going to really have to use a lot of chemicals on to deal with the pest issues. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
It's
almost like our minds have been so infected by industrialism and like globalization that we can't even really wrap our heads around like not only the goodness that comes from like local specificity, but like how much easier it is actually. You're not swimming against the current. Like globalization and industrialism and like rational efficiency, all of those things, I'm doing air quotes, all of those things really are a way to like wrestle against nature and culture to kind of force it to be something it doesn't want to be, as opposed to like just kind of like letting go, letting God, like seeing what the seed wants to grow into and just husbanding that into existence, like helping it thrive as opposed to like trying to make it something it doesn't want to be. Like it just comes back down to like, yeah, humans, culture, nature, like local culture, like ecology, all of these different things, like they have like little blueprints, like you were saying, like written into them, you know, like what is it that grows near you, the pawpaw?
Yes.
It's like, you know, the like plant those if they work, you know, and they're easy and they work well, like why fight against it and try to plant, you know, some either tropical fruit or like northern climate adapted fruit when this particular damn it, I was in the middle of a rant and it cut me off. Are you there? So after some technical difficulties, I was ranting about pawpaws, but I remember Roxanne in the homesteading class and across the different classes was talking about like basically pawpaws are like a very common fruit in her area and basically like, you know, go to your local extension or local plant nursery and ask what's locally adapted as opposed to, you know, like eradicating naturally growing pawpaws and then planting a bunch of fruit that's either adapted to like the tropics or adapted to northern climates. And so fundamentally, I think my argument is, and going back to what you said earlier about the seed, is like, you know, just letting things emerge as is in keeping with their blueprint, as opposed to with this industrial or globalized system trying to force things to be something they don't really want to be. So yeah.
I think that's exactly it. It's like it's happened we did it with plant species, you know, we're like, okay, we're going to take these few plants that grow really well in other places, and then we're going to force them to grow everywhere, like corn, soy, apples, that kind of stuff. And then we're going to form our entire food system around these things. And instead of allowing certain systems to emerge from where they are. The place, the place itself will allow things to emerge, and those can be food systems, they can be clothing, fabrics and stuff, because if you know how to use the local plants, you learn how to use them for fiber, all of this stuff. Whereas like we use cotton so much because this is something that is grown on a massive scale and also responsible for a ton of damage to the environment. So and so it's like it's mass produced foodstuffs, this globalized system, and it's also mass producing people. And so people feel a rootlessness because they're not allowed to put down roots in the place that they are and understand how everything works and get to know the ecology of their place. There's like a naturalness to doing this. Like it feels normal and people feel happy doing it. Children that get to explore this way, they get to go forage and learn about the local environment and make things out of the things that occur. I mean, it makes them feel happy. And I think there's just a naturalness to it that we're missing because we don't know how to use any of the things that occur in our environment. And then we go to Walmart and we buy everything from the store. And so again, when we talk about just like people getting to express who they are, how many people should be local artisans, makers, builders, or whatever, and they're not. They are doing jobs that are being perpetuated by this globalized system that they feel not a lot of fulfillment in because they're not allowed to express who they were designed to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think like, I guess fundamentally it comes down to this like internal and external transformation. Like it is a simultaneous internal transformation that happens when you allow yourself to be like in this kind of husbandry dance with nature and culture. And I think like probably what I'm most nervous about in terms of the trendiness is that you take the superficial Instagram version of what you want to have happen and you come in and you try to force a local culture to look the same as everything else on Instagram, on like Homestead Instagram or cottagecore. And what you really need to be doing is like allowing yourself to go on some sort of internal and external like dance that allows like locality to emerge and allows like difference and diversity to emerge. And I think it's just so outside of our frame, which is, I think, not just standardization is part of our frame, it's also competition. Like on Instagram and cottagecore, everything has to look the same. And then you are all like, I want to do it better than somebody else. Like I want my thing to be the same, but like a better version of the same, as opposed to an attitude of like, oh, look, they're doing their thing and it's like very specific to their place and I'm going to do my version of my thing and it's not like the same as theirs at all. It's just adjacent and diverse in like a like a locally specific way. So I like it's really kind of like a change of mentality entirely, which is it's not really about competition and it's not really about like being the best and it's not also about like being the same. It's really about like this internal transformation where you allow diversity to emerge. And it's really hard to get people to wrap their heads around that, I think. Hopefully, I mean, I think a lot of people it takes a process of experimentation, but you also have to be like change your whole perspective towards it. Like, I don't want to win at this. I don't want to be the best and I don't want to be the same. It's totally different. It's like, I want to, I don't know, like learn humility, learn how to cultivate beauty that's specific to my life and interests. Like I was just tweeting about this the other day. Like when I first came to the land, I was like, our main goal is just going to only be food related stuff. And then I realized like we got into this house really quickly that was like the cheapest house we could build. And I was like, just so motivated to just plant flowers everywhere in the house and like work on my flower garden. And I was like, never thought I would be interested in flower gardening, like not my, oh, radical anti-globalist, like food self-sufficiency or die kind of attitude before I came here. And then I came here and I'm just like, this is what's motivating me at the moment. Like, I want chickens, I want fruit trees. We're working on like ruminants. We're taking different, we're trying different ruminants. We had horses for a while, but like really right now, I want this house to look nice. This is where we live, and so I've just been like an old lady in the flower garden, and I love it, and it's okay. Like this is what is emerging in me, and I'm like allowing it, if that makes sense.
That feeling right there, Ashley, that is exactly what I'm talking about. And that's how everything that's come about in my life has emerged like that. And for some reason, a lot of people, I think one of the reasons I trust myself that way is because I wasn't parented a lot as a kid. That sounds bad, but I wasn't. I was on my own a lot. And so I learned how to trust myself. And I think that's something that standardization in our school system really beats out of people, is like they get an instinct or they want to do their project a certain way and then they get a bad grade on it because they were listening to what was emerging in them instead of like following the assignment. Yeah. And I was always that kid that was like, I was this, it was like I would on my report card, she's very smart, but like refuses to follow directions. Yeah. And so, because of that too, I've oftentimes took the long way around. I was like hesitant to read books at first. I was hesitant to take courses or whatever. And now that I'm all these years in, now I'm kind of going back and filling in the gaps of things where it's like I just didn't get basic instruction because I just discovered things along the way. Like I experimented and failed like a ton and probably wasted a lot of energy or whatever, because that's just like my natural way of learning. And so I think following that emergentness, Ashley, like that is exactly what I'm talking about. Like you're becoming your seed, your seed is expressing itself and it's going to change all the time. And it's going to change in different seasons. Like when you become a mother and you kind of become obsessed with like learning all the things about babies and mothering and there's this new layer of yourself that's added and everything just gets kind of stacked on top of itself that way. And everybody's journey is going to look very different. And I had a similar experience with flowers, like carrying old food and then being like, but I love flowers too. And they're beautiful. And they add, they bring pollinators to the yard. So they're actually super beneficial. And oh, wait, you can eat a lot of them. And so I had like a similar journey with flowers. Whereas for the first few years, I was like, no way, I'm not going to let any flowers take up any precious space in my garden. And now my garden is totally, I plant more flowers than food in my garden because honestly, it looks beautiful. And when I can't tend to my garden and it gets out of control or the pests take some stuff and I can walk out there and still see my flowers like all pretty, it makes me happy. And that joy, being able to have that joy is like, it's a big part of it. It's what keeps you going, Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of it is totally just like this efficiency mindset too, that you have to let go of. It's like, not everything is just about like some measurable end goal. Like some of it is, like you were saying about baking the pie with your kids, like, yes, you could just take some of the money you earn at the farmer's market and go to the store and buy a pie. And that would be, I guess, like a rational, efficient choice, but like the long way around actually is worth it in immeasurable ways. And you really can't argue based on efficiency that it's worth it. You just can't. That's not the point. And so I think like fundamentally, you and I and a lot of the people drawn to this are like very stubborn and won't let, we're like disagreeable to the point of like, we won't let other people's determinations of like what's worthwhile run our lives.
Yes. That's a huge one too. But here's the thing is nobody could have told me from the outside what I learned by just that nation with my friend and observing it. It's like I had to get it for myself. And so I think that's why I started being, even though it was like, it felt very antithetical to who I was and I really struggled with all the social media stuff. It was like, I started to really want to share that journey with people. And I want to do it in a more tangible way where we're inviting people to our farm and like just offering that people can come work alongside us and stuff. But we have to be mindful about, like just boundaries with people, and like our first responsibilities like to our children,
Yes.
and so we're trying to figure out how to do that in a way that also feels very safe. But like, yeah, I the way that everything is right now and how everything's been constructed around like the most efficient, the cheapest, the scale, and like everybody being like, oh well, that food, it's the cheapest, so it's the best option. Or like we've been tricked into believing things that are fast, convenient, cheap, that those are the best options, as if those are the only metrics that matter.
Right.
And it's a lie. It's such a lie that we've bought into. And it's honestly, there's a lot of lies that our culture has told us that we've bought into. And I think our generation is beginning to see it, because we see a lot of, I don't know about you, but like our generation, a lot of my peers bought into the lie that like you should go start your career first, go to college, get a fancy degree, start your career, and then like have a family when it made sense later. Well, I mean, a lot of people are bumping up against that now and realizing that there are some real material constraints, and that maybe they should have gone the other way around. I mean, that's honestly probably what I will encourage my kids to do, because like I had a career at first and then had my kids, but then was able to sort of like I'm allowing like a career to emerge from what I'm doing at home and the things I like to create, and the way I like to spend my time and stuff, and the skills that I've gotten good at, which not everybody's going to be a gardener, right? Like there's things I wish I was better at, like fiber arts or that kind of stuff. And everybody's going to have their own passion and get to be good at their own thing. And then to try to figure out how to, you don't have to learn how to make money off of it at all. That's not like necessary for it being important or joyful or good. But I'm just saying, if that is important to you and you feel like you want to contribute in that financial way, having to trade, you can build that alongside your motherhood journey. I don't know why we ever thought that that wasn't a possibility. Like once they're not babies, a lot of time, and you can learn how to do things right alongside them.
Right. Right.
So,
and I also think about like, yeah, I definitely advocate for not waiting until you're like quote unquote established to have children. Partially just because like I think there's also something extremely emergent about kids that teaches you a lot. And if you wait too long, obviously there's like limitations on fertility, but there's also like this thing where you kind of like get established as an adult, and then the children are like almost like an interruption to your daily routines, as opposed to like having them earlier on. There is a thing where you kind of like grow into adulthood in the process of becoming a parent. That's like very forcing you to be mature, but also forcing you to integrate them into your lives. I wonder if you have some thoughts for people, because I totally agree. This is why I have my whole field school about experiencing things. This is my last question, like experiential learning. Like you obviously learned from experiencing your time in Costa Rica. Like, what would you advise for people who are like, okay, I want to like have these insights, I want to have these experiences, like how do I get started?
I think experiential learning really is the best way. And so if you have people in your life who are living in such a way that you wish you could live that way, figure out a way to be useful to those people, volunteer them, or see if there's, if you're a young woman and you think you might want to grow up to homeschool your kids or something, volunteer some of your time to like a woman who's homeschooling, and just see if you can like, come help her out with her kids and kind of observe what she's doing with her older kids. Or if you want to learn how to farm, go offer to help a farmer. I think that there's like a real problem. People today are like, I mean, they're talking about like the labor of motherhood and how everything should be paid for. And it's like people want to get paid for everything. And it's like, well, if you're going and volunteering on someone's farm and you don't know what you're doing, you're slowing them down.
Right.
Like you should be paying for the opportunity.
Right.
Like if they have to explain every little thing to you, you're lucky that they're taking the time to do that. A lot of people aren't interested in even doing that. Like they would rather not have the help than have someone help that doesn't know what they're doing, because that ends up being more work for them. So if you find someone who's gracious enough to allow you to come be with them, like don't worry about getting paid. If you get paid, that's an awesome bonus. Yay. But yeah, and then as far as like your early job opportunity or whatever, it's like if you want to be a landowner someday, do go get a job on a farm. Like whether it's paid or not though, the more you can immerse yourself, it's just like learning a language. If you can immerse yourself in the language, like I took high school Spanish and junior high Spanish, and I could speak no Spanish. And the only way I learned how to speak a little bit, and I'm still terrible at it, but I learned the most when living somewhere where I was forced to speak it. Right. And so I feel like immersion is the most successful way to learn, and getting to learn hands-on. And if you feel like you don't have anybody to learn with, and say you're a young mom and you want to learn all these homesteady things, find a group of friends who wants to learn them too, and like get together. Be like, okay, so this month let's get together at my house and bake bread, and next month we'll get together at your house and we'll make a ginger bug, and all the kids can kind of help each other and keep each other company, and the moms can pitch in a little bit. But like make a little club or something around learning these things with your people that you like. So those are some of my tips. And books and YouTube, I mean, we have access to all of that stuff as well. But if you can just go get experience, that's the best. I mean, we lived on that apple orchard, and then in Northern California, there's tons of farms, like organic farms, biodynamic farms. And we went and took tours of places and just kind of soaked it all up as much as we could while we were there.
Yeah. And I mean, even something like, I can imagine at the farmer's market, if somebody came up and said like, could I volunteer and like help you guys at your stand like next week for like, just, and then they like can learn a lot from osmosis, like just being around you, just seeing how you interact with the kids, like seeing how you interact with customers, what the kinds of things you talk about. I think there's just like so much social learning that happens just being around people who are on the far side of the curve of figuring it out. That can be really motivating and helpful. Cause like I worked on organic farms in Italy doing this program called WOOF, Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms.
Oh yes, woofers.
And woofing is great. And I'm sitting in their beautiful Italian villa. There's this giant wisteria plant that's like over where we sit and eat outside. Like everything we're eating is either from town or from their particular farm. Just sitting and watching how they interact with their kids. That was like, okay, this is what I want, just seeing it. It was so much better than reading about it anywhere or seeing even just pictures. It was like, oh, wow. Okay. So now I see what the pace of life is like, because you actually see it.
Yes, totally. And you wake up to the possibility, and you just can't imagine it until you're there. And so, yeah, I think if there's something that you want to learn how to do, or a way that you want to live, find someone who's living that way, and try to, in like a non-creepy way, try to be around that person, and also, like obviously respect people's boundaries and stuff. Like don't push too hard, because some people aren't going to want that, or it might not be the season in their life where they're able to accommodate that. Like I've had lots of people say, hey, can we just come like help you guys out with your farm and do this and that? And it's like, we're just not really set up for that right now. And it's same. Like, but someday you do want to do that. Like that's just not where we're at, but in a few years we will be. So like, don't let it hurt your feelings, hinder you from continuing to pursue that. But sorts of ways to learn now. And I would say too, like following certain people on social media and reading their books and that kind of stuff did help me. I mean, you want to make sure that you are following people that are authentic, because whenever a movement becomes trendy, then it becomes like, you don't know really what you're getting, so try to make sure that it's like the people are for real and that they're a little bit seasoned, and maybe their stuff won't look as pretty or as flashy or as like on trend, but like maybe they might know what they're doing more. I don't know. It's yeah.
Sorry, Roxanne, you know how I know you're for real?
I don't know how.
Your fingernails.
Totally unstyled. It really was though. The publisher's like, you haven't done anything yet. to promote, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna go outside and let my 9-year-old take some pictures of me.
And so the backstory here is like Roxanne had a picture of herself holding her book, and she has short nails. She's like an actual homesteader. And our friend and ally Wrath of None said, like, you can tell this is legit because she has like short fingernails. And Roxanne and I laughed about it, and Wrath of None was laughing about it too. But yeah, look at the fingernails. That's how you know.
Well, but you know what though? Sometimes I polish them just because it's easier than cleaning all the dirt out. Because sometimes people be like, "Wow, you have time to paint your fingernails," and I'm like, "Well, sometimes it's because like when you're in the garden and you just can't get them clean all summer. So that's like my hack is like I'll keep them polished because it hides the dirt."
Okay, on that note, yeah, I will let you go, Roxanne. This was so awesome. Yeah, I can't believe it's been this long before you've been on a guest on the show. Everybody go get Roxanne's book. Roxanne, what's it called, your book?
It's called Holistic Homesteading, a guide to a sustainable and regenerative lifestyle. And there's chapters on what you should look for if you're looking to buy land, ideas for starting your own little homestead business or your own little localized business. And then there's chapters on like gardening, foraging, baking with sourdough, and food preservation. So it's just kind of a little intro to all things homesteading, and then a lot of photography from our homestead. So
awesome. Okay, we'll put links in the description of this episode so everybody can find where to buy it. Thank you so much, Roxanne. We'll see you on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Bye.